In this simulation, we will describe metals and nonmetals in the periodic table. Let's start with the physical properties of metals and nonmetals. Let's start with the properties of a typical metal. Metals are shiny, they are good conductors of electricity, they are malleable, they are sonorous, they are good conductors of heat, they are ductile, they have relatively high melting points, and some metals such as iron, cobalt, and nickel are magnetic metals. So these are some physical properties of metals. Let's now investigate the physical properties of nonmetals. Nonmetals are dull, they are poor conductors of electricity and they are poor conductors of heat as well. They are brittle and they have low melting points. It's important that you remember these physical properties of metals and nonmetals. Let's now answer some questions. First of all, match the following properties to metals or nonmetals. Low melting point, good conductor of heat, and poor conductor of electricity. Which of these properties corresponds to a metal and which to a nonmetal? Excellent. Nonmetals have low melting point and they are poor conductors of electricity, whereas metals are good conductors of heat. Here is another set of properties, and we have also to label each property as corresponding to a metal or a nonmetal. That's perfect. Nonmetals are brittle and they are poor conductors of heat, whereas metals are good conductors of electricity and they are malleable. Let's now discuss metalloids or semi-metals. Some elements, such as iron, are easy to classify as metals. Iron has all the typical physical and chemical properties of a metal. For example, it's a good conductor of electricity, and its oxide is basic. Other elements, such as oxygen or sulfur, are obviously nonmetals. However, a few elements are more difficult to classify. For example, they might conduct electricity better than a nonmetal, but not as well as a metal. So they are called semiconductors. They may be shiny like a metal, but brittle like a nonmetal. So we call these metalloids or semi-metals. The best known of the metalloids is silicon, Si. The element silicon is used in microchips in electronics. Let's now describe the location of metals and nonmetals in the periodic table. If we take a look at the periodic table, we find that metals are on the left-hand side and nonmetals are on the right. Actually, there are more metallic elements than nonmetals. We can draw an imaginary dividing line between the metals and nonmetals in the periodic table. And not surprisingly, the metalloids lie near this dividing line. Let's examine carefully this figure. Here we have metals. Most metals are shiny, hard, and dense. They conduct electricity and heat, and they have mostly high melting and boiling points. In addition to that, they are malleable and ductile. For example, lithium, sodium, chromium, iron, zinc, copper, aluminum, and we have the rare earth metals. So all of these are metals. They are located to the left of the periodic table. On the other hand, neon, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur, and chlorine, for example, are all nonmetals. They have low melting points, they are dull and brittle if solid, and most are poor conductors of heat and electricity. Here we have metalloids, which have properties of both metals and nonmetals. Boron and silicon, for example, are examples of metalloids.